Everyone, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's class in Tanya, exploring Tanya, and the theme of our course, Awaken Your Soul and Take Control. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I have people here in the synagogue, I have people on Zoom, and let's hope to be able to inspire each other tonight in Mir Hashem. Let's just start with a drop of an introduction. The Tanya was authored by Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, he published the Tanya, and when he wrote the Tanya, it took him 20 years to write the Tanya. And the reason it took him 20 years to write the Tanya was because he wanted to make sure there is no extra letter, no extra saying, nothing extra, and everything that's in there is supposed to be in there, and nothing that should not be in there is in there. So he spent 20 years on writing the Tanya. The Tanya was published in 1796. Interesting enough, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi was also known as the Baal HaTanya, which means the author of the Tanya. And he was also known as the Alter Rebbe in Yiddish, which means the old Rebbe, which really is the first Chabad rabbi. In other words, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi is the one who founded the Chabad philosophy of Hasidus, the Chabad dynasty. So that's just a very short introduction about Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. I'd like to start the Tanya. The Tanya is going to be text-based, but I'm not focusing on the text. In other words, I'm going to be reading it, explaining it, translating it, but my main focus is going to be what can we take out to our daily lives, what lessons can we take out in our daily lives from the Tanya. So it's not going to be focused on the text, even though I'll be reading it, but I'll be focusing more on what can we take out, how can we make this relevant to us in our daily lives. So we're going to start off with what we call the Sharblat, the first page, which is the title page. And the title page over here was written by the author himself, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the Baal HaTanya. And the first thing he says that this book is called Sefer Lokutei Amorim, which means it's the book of gathering of sayings. It's an anthology of different sayings. Interesting. In other words, he wrote that out of his own humility. It's not mine, he's saying. It's not my own stuff. What is it exactly? It is different sayings. And it's Chelek Rishon. He writes, it is the first section, the first volume. Now, the entire Tanya is 5 volumes. We're going to learn, or attempt to learn, the first volume, which is called Likutei Amorim, which has in it 53 chapters. Hanikra, this is called also by the name B'Shem Sefer Shel Beidanim. Interesting, it's called the book of in-betweeners. What does that mean exactly? It means as follows. If you look in life, we basically have 3 categories of people. We have one category is called a tzaddik, a righteous man, a righteous person, a righteous man or woman, a tzaddik. We also have someone called a rasha. One is called wicked, a wicked man or woman. And then you have what we call a beinoni, an in-betweener. He's not good, he's not bad, he's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. He's in the middle, a beinoni. We're going to see in the Tanya that the definitions that we all look at a tzaddik, Rasha and Beinani, and define it by simple definitions, according to the Baal Tanya, according to the Alter Rebbe, those are not the correct definitions. Righteous, bad, wicked, in between, no. What the Alter Rebbe is telling us is that this term Beinoni, in between, is talking about every one of us here. Everyone, doesn't matter who, what, where, every single person is a Beinoni. We all have struggles. There is not one person in life that doesn't have a struggle in life, that doesn't have a struggle with God, that doesn't have a struggle with Yiddishkeit, that doesn't have a struggle with Judaism. Imagine, sometimes in the morning I wake up full of zest. Let's go daven. It's time to go daven, to put on tefillin. Goes on 1, 2, 3, 4 days, another day, it's not let's go daven, is, I gotta go daven. I gotta get up early. Why do I have to get up early? Why do I have to do this? We have this constant struggle. And it's not only, we're not talking now, my friends, we're not talking about, I want to make this very clear, we're not talking about observant, not observant. We're not talking about that. Forget about that. We're all equal here. Let's get that straight. The Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya, looks at every single Jew as an equal. Finished. And says the Baal Tanya, we all have this struggle. Some of us on different levels, some of us different struggles. Some of us, like I've said in the past, some of us struggle when we drive by a Burger King. Some of us struggle on Shabbat. Some of us struggle when we have to get up in the morning. We all have our struggles with life. And that's why the Alter Rebbe says this book is not a book for the righteous. It's not a book for wicked. It's a book for every single one of us. It's talking about us. A Sefer Shel Beinanim, a book of in-betweeners. And he goes further and he says as follows. Melukot, it is a gathering. Melukot, it is a gathering. Mipi Sfarim or Mipi Seifrim Kadesha Alya Nishmasan Eden. It is a gathering of teachings and lessons from very holy people. Holy books and holy people. Who is he referring to? The Alter Rebbe is referring to 1, the Maharal of Prague. 2, he's referring to a Rabbi, Yeshaya Horowitz, which was titled the Shalah HaKadosh, the Holy Shalah. And the souls, the holy souls that are the Baal Shem Tov and the Mizritch Magid. The Alter Rebbe was a student of the Mizritch Magid, and the Mizritch Magid was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. Now we're talking about, keep in mind, we're talking about 1700s. Baal Shem Tov was in the 1600s, and we're going into the 1700s. Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement. He had a student called the Mizritch Magid. The Mizritch Magid had many students. One of them was a prize student called Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, and he started in the Hasidic movement itself. He started the Chabad Hasidus. And that's what Tanya is all about here right now. So let's go a little further. Miyusad, and this is the key, my friends. This is the key to the entire book of Tanya, what I'm about to read right now. Miyusad, these 53 chapters that we are going to tackle is based al pasuk on a verse in the Torah. And the verse in the Torah says, Ki karov elecha hadavar ma'od. Listen to this. This mitzvah, and it's talking about Judaism, this Judaism that we all know, this Torah that we got, these mitzvahs, 613 commandments, Karov elecha hadavar ma'od, it's very close to you. What do we mean here by very close? It's reachable for every one of you, says Moshe Rabbeinu. It's reachable for everyone. It's attainable. I'll get back to this in a second. And how attainable is it? Beficha uvelvavcha la'asaisai. Beficha, in your mouth. Bilvavcha, in your heart, your thoughts. La'asoso, in your actions. Which means, my friends, these three things, thought, speech, and action, these are the three ways people express themselves to each other. These are the way we express ourselves in the world. And says the Chumash, the Torah, it's very close to you. It's attainable, which I'll speak about this in a second. What is Moshe Rabbeinu telling them in the Torah? Again, we said that these 53 chapters of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, the Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, is basing the entire book of Tanya, his magnum opus. He is basing it on one verse in the entire Torah. What's this verse about? The verse is found in the Torah at the end of the Torah, and the portion called Nitzavim. It's the last 37 days of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. And he's basically telling them his last will and testament, so to speak. And he says to them as follows. You see this Torah? You see the mitzvahs that you got, the commandments? In other words, this whole thing called Judaism, Yiddishkeit, Lo niflesi, it's not hidden from you. Not far from you. Lo bashamayim hi, it's not in heaven. V'lo me'ever layam hi, and it's not on the other side of the sea. It's not across the ocean. What's Moshe Rabbeinu saying here? Judaism is not hidden, that you have to go looking for it. It's not far. It's not on the other side of the sea. It's not in the heavens that we're going to say, throw it down, God, throw it down. No. It's not on the other side of the sea that we have to take a boat with a captain and go conquer Judaism. What does Moshe Rabbeinu say? So where is it? And this is the verse brought down by the Alter Rebbe, by the Baal Tanya. Ki karev elecha hadavar me'od. It is close to you. It's in front of your nose. And not only is it close, karev me'od, it's very close. Ki karev elecha hadavar me'od, beficha in your mouth, befavcha la'asai, to do it. In other words, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter how you were brought up. It doesn't matter where you went to yeshiva. It doesn't matter where you went to seminary. It doesn't matter if you went to seminary or if you went to yeshiva. And it doesn't matter if you were brought up observant or not. Says the Alter Rebbe, he brings down the pasuk, the verse. Ki karev elecha hadavar ma'od. It's attainable for everyone. Now, what does this word karev mean? It's attainable. Let's figure this out for a second. What does karev mean? In order to understand this, let's discuss a little bit what time period was this happening in. This was a brand new stage in life. Jews already then started living in the cities, not in the ghettos. Assimilation started then. The Enlightenment movement. Voltaire, Rousseau, their philosophies. They wanted to change the world. And this is what Judaism was up against. So the Alter Rebbe is saying, wait a minute. The challenges are not only great now, the challenges are great now, and it'll always be even greater, which we look around today. The distractions and challenges there are in the world today, the opposition that Judaism has today is crazy. Says the Alter Rebbe, how do we overcome this challenge? Not just by doing it. Not just to do it, but make it yours. Own it. Make it part of your life. Not only a cultural thing. It's not only a culture. And it's not only I'm doing it because my father did it. So that's my comfort zone. My father did it. My grandfather did it. So therefore, I also have to do it. You know what we call that? We call that, my friends, robotic. We call that, it's habitual. Yeah, I got to put on tefillin and eat kosher and do whatever I'm doing. Why? Because my father did it. But what's inside of me? Do I really feel it? Does it talk to me? What's the answer to that? Forget about most Jews today. Take a lot of yeshiva boys. Take yeshiva boys today. Take seminary girls, a lot of them. It doesn't speak to them. Bless you. It doesn't speak to them. Why? Because they don't make it theirs. They're just doing it. What do we mean by making it ours? What do we mean by owning our Judaism, what we're doing? What do we mean by that? We mean internalizing. Internalizing from the moment we get up in the morning till the time we go to sleep at night, let's internalize it and own it. What does that mean? That means as follows. We get up in the morning. We're not just putting on our tefillin. You're putting it on your way. I'm putting it on my way. But we're putting it on in our own ways. We're owning it. Why? Because it means something to us. Yiddishkeit is internalized. We own our Yiddishkeit. We're not doing it because my neighbor is doing it. What is the difference between owning it and not owning it? What is the difference between making it ours or not? The difference is as follows. When I'm in shul and when I'm around people and it looks good, hey, I act a certain way. My Yiddishkeit is there. My talus is over my head. I have to eat a certain way and sleep a certain way and pray a certain way and do it. Now when I'm alone and no one's watching, what am I doing now? Am I doing that same exact thing? Or am I not? Or am I not doing it at all? There are people that will only do it. Why? Because it looks very good. You know, I have to belong to the synagogue. I have to belong to the social group. But what happens when I'm alone in the house? What happens when no one's looking at me and it doesn't look that good? Am I still davening with my talus over the head just like I would be in the front sitting in my seat? Am I davening that same way at home? Do I keep Shabbos the same way in my home? Same way as home when I go on a vacation? Does Yiddishkeit mean, do I take the Yiddishkeit with me? That is the difference between owning it, making it ours, or doing it because it's a nice thing. You know, we come to shul on Shabbat and we have a good time and so on and so forth. And then afterwards we have a good shulant and a good herring and schmaltz herring with gefilte fish and we have a good lunch. So then if we get, then it's good. And we socialize a little bit and we go and do whatever we have to do. That's the difference, my friends, between making Yiddishkeit ours, owning it, and doing it because it's a culture, because, my father did, so I got to do it. So when everyone's looking, I am it. I'm holier than thou. But now when I'm alone, what does Yiddishkeit mean to me? What does it actually mean? And that's what it means, the difference of owning it, making it my personal Yiddishkeit, making God my personal God. Or, he's a cool guy, God in shul. I'll leave him in shul and I'll go and do my business and do whatever I have to, and then I'll come back to God a little later. And then the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya, says a very interesting thing. And he says, and I'm going to show you, says the Alter Rebbe, Levar Heitiv, I'm going to explain to you, how can you make it your own Yiddishkeit? Says the Alter Rebbe, you want to know how to make it your own, how to make it your personal Yiddishkeit, how to live it, how to sleep it, eat it, and then imagine how to love it, Could you imagine people loving Yiddishkeit? Loving Judaism? Because if you love something, you live it. And if you live it, you love it. So the Alter Rebbe says here, in these 53 chapters, I'm going to show you how to internalize God. And through this internalizing God, says the Alter Rebbe, not only will I show you how to have that relationship now a better relationship with God, I'm going to show you how to have a better business relationship. I'm going to show you how to have a relationship better with your friends. And I'm going to show you even how to have a better relationship with your spouse, children, and grandchildren. It's not only, says the Alter Rebbe, about observance, religion. It's about relationships. It's about being a mensch. It's about knowing who you are and knowing what your mission statement is. Think about that, my friends. If someone comes over to us and says to us, what is your mission statement, right? Those of us in business, we know. We all have mission statements in our businesses. If someone comes over to us and says, in your life, what is your mission statement? Think about what you would answer. Think about if you have an answer first. Think about if you know what to answer. Says the Alter Rebbe, I will teach you what your mission statement is. And it's not only one mission statement. Everyone will learn who they are, says the Alter Rebbe. I will teach you who you really are. Did you ever think about that? Stand back a little bit, look in the mirror and say, who am I? What am I? Why am I? We never do that. Because sometimes if we look in the mirror and ask that question, it could be extremely scary to answer, right? Who am I? What am I? Why am I? Says the Alter Rebbe, you got to understand one thing. Whether you're observant or not, I'm staying away from that word. Everyone, please excuse me. I'm staying away from the word. I'm trying to at least religious. I don't like that word religious. Okay? Everyone is religious in their own ways. So whether we keep the Torah or not, whether we keep part of the Torah, half of the mitzvahs, whether we were brought up with it, says the Alter Rebbe, I have what to show you. That you can even get closer, because not everyone that was brought up with this yeshiva environment and with observance, not everyone owns their Yiddishkeit. They're doing it, because I was brought up like that. I have to do it. If I don't do it, I'm going to disappoint. I'm going to disappoint myself. But they really don't do it because they want to do it. They were born into it. That's one group of people. How about another group of people? How many times do people come over to me and say, Rabbi, Rabbi, you're from a whole different world. And some people look at me from a different planet, but that's besides the point. But imagine, Rabbi, you were brought up in yeshiva. You were religious your whole life. You did this your whole life. You put on tefillin since your bar mitzvah. I never had any observance in my family. I didn't go to a yeshiva. I didn't go to synagogue all my life like you did, Rabbi. How can I relate? Says Alter Rebbe, Ki karev elecha, everyone, no matter what your background is, everyone can relate. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you come from. One thing's for sure, as we'll see when we start Tanya next week, everyone has a divine spark in them. Everyone has a divine spark in them. Everyone, please, ladies and gentlemen, get that straight. Everyone. It doesn't matter on your observance. Everyone can relate to the same Torah, to the same God, to the same religion, just like Rabbi O, and just like all the rabbis who are greater than Rabbi O, and the rabbis from the previous generation, and so on and so forth. And then the Alter Rebbe says, and how am I going to explain this to you? How it's so close to you, how it's so attainable? B'derech aruka ukitzora. Or as they say in Israel, b'derech aruka ukitzara, which means in a long and short way. Now, what does that exactly mean? A long and short way. There are two ways to live a life, to get to a goal. One way is to get to a goal, make a goal, and get that quick fix. And you think you're there, and you're not getting too far. You're not getting too far. I'm getting a little further, and you still have a long way to go. Why? Because we're looking for shortcuts, and we're looking for that quick fix. So what happens? That is called a short and long way. It's short because distance-wise it might be short, but you're never getting there. You're never getting to reach your goal. But then there's something called a long and short way. A long and short way means it's a lot of work. It's a lot of, as they say in Yiddish, harevanya. It's a lot of hard work and striving and fighting and going back and going forward again. But the harder you strive and the harder you work, the further you get. And once you get to that goal after all this hard work, then you remain there. You don't fall back. In short, what it means is as follows. There are those of us that many times we feel we're there. How do we feel we're there? Wow, the rabbi's class tonight, the rabbi's sermon on Shabbos, inspiring. It's great inspiration. But after a day or two or three, and sometimes after the chont on Shabbos, the inspiration is gone already. Everything's finished. Why? Because we depend on external inspiration. Once it's external inspiration, the inspiration does not last. You know what the Tanya teaches us? How can we inspire ourselves? Once we inspire ourselves, that's coming from internal, our internal selves, that we inspire ourselves, because once we inspire ourselves, guess what? it becomes internalized and it remains with us. If it's from the outside, it stays on the outside. But if it's from the inside, it doesn't come out. Why? It stays because we internalize, it's ingrained in us. So what does it mean when the Alter Rebbe says, B'derech haruka ktsara, a long and short way? He says, listen, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, he says, boys and girls of all ages, you're going to get there. But it's going to take time. And that time means a lot of hard work. And what does this hard work mean? Contemplation, making it real, contemplating who God is and what God is and what are we doing on this world. And all this, by the way, is in the 53 chapters. The Alter Rebbe speaks about every single situation in life that we go through, every single struggle. We think because we're living in today's day and age, our struggles just apply to today. Our struggles in business and our struggles with depression and our struggles with anxiety and our struggles with Yiddishkeit and our struggles with everything else in life. We think that's today's struggles. Back then, what kind of struggles did they have? They had the same type of struggles, my friends. Exactly the same. Different shape, different forms, but they had the same struggles. But when something was internalized, God forbid, the worst thing could have happened to them, and yet you saw a certain happiness on their face, because we call that a true simchas hachayim. Simchas hachayim means a true joy of life. Not joy because I have an extra zero in the bank. Not joy because my favorite team just won. Not joy because I just made it in the casinos. That's all external. But Simchas HaChayim means it's internal, it's ingrained in me. I'm happy with life. And part of life is when it hits the fan. That is part of life. And now we have to know, now that this is part of life, that sometimes things do not go the way we want them to go. How do we handle it? The Tanya tells us how to handle things in life, how to make it internal, how to be happy even when God gives us a curveball, God forbid. And none of us like those curveballs. But how to handle it, that's what Tanya teaches us. My friends, just to conclude, I'm going to tell you one thing. I've been saying this for the past few months here in Shul, and I'm going to say it again. We do not have a choice. Again, we do not have a choice of what will happen to us. Things happen, and we're not in control. But my friends, we have a choice. It's up to us. How are we going to handle it? How are we going to handle the good, the bad, and unfortunate, the ugly? This is what Tanya is going to prepare us for. To tackle depression, to tackle anxiety, to tackle our struggles with God and our struggles with Yiddishkeit and Judaism. But before we do all that, says Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, he builds a foundation. And the foundation is, who are you first? What is the relationship we're going to start learning in the future? What is the relationship between your body and your soul? What is your body? What is your soul? And how do they relate to each other? Or do they? Or don't they? What is real life all about? Life is a struggle between body and soul. The soul, as a Balatanya we're going to learn, the soul is completely selfless. The soul is a divine spark of godliness, as we're going to learn in the second chapter. Which means every single Jew, observant or not, has a divine spark of God in him, which is completely selfless. And then he has that energy that drives him, called the animalistic soul, his body. And all that animalistic soul is interested in is selfishness, driven by ego. And remember, as I always say, what does ego stand for? E-G-O, edge God out. When we edge God out of our lives, that is, we become animals. We become animalistic. And through whatever we do, says the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, as far as you might think you are, you're still not that far. And that Torah, that Judaism, that great 613 mitzvos, and God is attainable for even those who did the worst thing last night and did who knows what. And yet he can wake up in the morning and say, Moda'ani lefanecha. And as we say every morning, or at least we're supposed to say every morning, Elokai, my God, Neshama shenasata bi, the soul you gave me, Tahora, it's pure. Wait a minute. What do you mean it's pure? Last night, I ate a gewaldige cheeseburger, and it was gushing, and wow. Okay? And I did who knows what, and you know what it was? It was on Friday night. On Shabbos, I did the worst. Yet I wake up in the morning, I can still say wholeheartedly to God, Elokai, my God, Neshama shenasata bi, Tahira, he is pure. Why? Because today's a new day. Today is a new day. It's a clean slate. God has his arms open, stretched out. You know what they say in English? Reach out and touch someone. That's all. All we have to do is reach out. Why? As the Torah says, and the Alter Rebbe brings down in Tanya, and the whole Tanya is based on this, Ki karev elecha hadavar ma'od. Anyone, everyone can reach it. It's reachable for everyone. For the Jew who wasn't brought up with it, for the Jew who was brought up with it, but he does it for every other reason except for the right reasons, it's attainable for every Jew. So my dear friends, this is just the introduction to Tanya, the title page, and we will continue Emir Hashem next week, Monday at 7:30. Thanks again for coming, for joining. I wish you a good night and all the best. Be well, everyone. Sei gesund. Be well.